Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Joel here with my dad.
And I'm Rick, and we're glad to have you. What's on the topic for today, Joel?
Well, I wanted to cover another one of a question from our listener, and we have one listener, and she asks great
I have a
questions.
lot of questions, doesn't she?
No, we have actually several listeners, and they ask great questions. One thing I wanted to comment on though is we're back on video. Our video was down for a while, so if you would love to see our lovely faces, and really we are looking quite lovely today. You can go to YouTube and just put youtube.com/Joel Malm, Joelmalm, and you will pull up the YouTube page where this is.
And if they subscribe, doesn't that give us some extra credos or something? We can do extra things with the channel if we get more subscribers?
Yes. If I can hit 1,000 subscribers, they will let me do some things that I'm trying to do with. I'm actually in the middle of my next book is going to be a documentary video series. I've decided to just make it a video. So, but I got to get 1,000 subscribers to get there. So anyway, we're getting there slowly. But the question we had today from our listener, let me actually, the exact quote here. Let me read it here. The question is, the question's not coming up. The question was, what is the value of fasting?
Yeah. Okay.
I thought I had it right here.
That's a good question.
And so I'll start with my personal story. I always hated fasting. My joke is that I would set out to do a 3-day fast and only get through a day and a half of it, which made me always wonder if I was a half-fast Christian, right? Half-fast Christian. So I couldn't do it, right? It didn't work for me. It was about 7 years ago, I felt like I was really supposed to get committed to fasting. So I decided to do what the early Christians did and fast on Friday. And I started doing it, and I actually it was rough the first few weeks, but I'll tell you what, man, a few months in, a few weeks in, my body started craving that Friday. It was like my body was looking forward to not eating. And then I started having all these health benefits from it. I didn't make the connection. A doctor did for me that I had actually beaten a lot of my allergies because of fasting. And she talked about the physical elements of it. So I want to see if we can cover both the physical, because I've seen the physical value of fasting, but also the spiritual element. Like, what is the spiritual value of fasting?
Okay. Well, starting with the physical one, there's a biblical illustration of that. David was, after Ziklag, at the end of David's, I'll try to make the story short. Anyway, he's pursuing an enemy that has conquered his city and carrying off all of his stuff, and his men are about to kill him. And so they're chasing this enemy down, this whole army, and they run across this Egyptian guy in the desert, and he was left there. They say, "Who are you?" "I'm an Egyptian. I was a slave. I was left here 3 days ago by my master because I was sick." So this guy was pretty sick. He was like sick unto death. They find him. He's been fasting 3 days. They feed him, and he's fine. And he leads them to the other army, by the way. So biblically, there's examples of healing through fasting as well. As well as, of course, examples of deliverance through fasting, where Jesus said, this kind, and I know there's some controversy on that particular passage of Scripture, but this kind doesn't come out but by prayer and fasting. And so there's physical.
Meaning that was a demon, right?
Yeah, demonic.
Yeah, and he's like, is that the one where he says, "Oh, you guys, how long do I have to hang out with y'all?
Yeah,
like, you're so frustrating."
Something like that.
Yeah, like, how long do I have to endure you?
Yeah, why do you have such lack of faith? I'm like, well, they gave it their best. Jesus, cut them some slack. I'm sorry, Lord, that's just seems like you're a little hard on them. I'm sure you'll explain it to me one day, but
I'm sure if we would have hung out with those 12 day in and day out, we probably would have been the same.
Oh,
right?
I'd have been worse. I mean, I wouldn't even have.
Jesus
will be here in a minute, just hang on just a minute. But they gave it their best, they had tried. So anyhow, there are a lot of benefits to it.
That sounds like so there's a spiritual power to it that comes with fasting.
Yeah. And, it's like you don't understand everything there is to know about that. I think let's talk about some of the things you don't do. I mean, because some people, I think we fast because we think we're going to get brownie points with God. Mm-hmm. No pun intended with the brownie points there,
By not eating brownies?
Yeah, by not eating. I could fast brownies for a month, or whatever. So it's not like it. Here's the thing: it doesn't do anything for God. Okay, so obviously, fasting does something for us, and you talked about the physical benefit of it, but there's obviously spiritual benefits too. There's times when they said we fasted in order to humble ourselves before God in the Old Testament. I think in the book of Ezra it talks about that. They fasted to humble themselves. So it's a humbling in that to me, the biggest thing, the thing that makes it make sense to me is it's telling my body, hey, you are not in charge here. It's also telling my soul, because, as we've talked before, we're three parts. We're spirit, the inner man, the part that comes alive, that's dead before we're born again. So we're spirit. We're soul, that's our emotions, our feelings, our will, the things we want, and our intellect, the things we think. That's like animals have a soul, dogs and cats, they have a soul, but they don't have a spirit. And then there's our body. Well, fasting, first of all, it tells my body, hey, down there, be quiet. You're not going to get fed today. So it puts it into subjection to the spirit. But it also does with my soul, because I want to eat. I feel grumpy, I'm hangry, And so it tells my soul, hey, you're not in charge here either. And so what it's doing is putting the spirit in the ascendancy in our being here. It's saying spirit is in charge here. And so that to me is one of the big things of it. It's just simply saying spirit's in charge. It allows it quiets. Well, actually, it doesn't quiet. During my times of fasting, I never really get great insights from the Lord. I just get hungry and grumpy. But I've noticed that afterwards, and this happened like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden I'd just be reading the Word. And it's like, wow, I never saw that before. Wow, the insights came after the fasting. During the fasting, I guess my body's in rebellion and my soul's saying, I'm hungry, feed me down here,
Yeah.
But the insights always came afterwards. And so, I don't know, that's been my experience with it. It's been helpful spiritually in that it puts the spirit in the ascendancy, and it says, I guess, to myself, David talked to his soul. Why are you downcast, O my soul? David talked to himself.
Yeah.
Why are you downcast, O my soul? Put your hope in God. He's talking to himself. Put your hope in God. And so in this way, you're giving the spirit the premier ascendancy. I hate to use that word because it sounds so 25 cents worth, but
well, here's my experience with fasting. I started doing the one day on the Friday, and then my body started looking forward to not eating. It was a weird thing on Thursday night.
That is pretty weird.
I don't have to eat tomorrow. Now, I love eating. And like I said, I would do the 3-day fast, try and do a 3-day, and I'd only get through 1.5. So I'm thinking, am I a half-fast Christian, right? Half-fast. I can't do it. But I was like, I can do 1 day. So I did a day. The crazy thing is, I was reading somewhere that early Christians used to fast on Fridays, and then I saw they actually fasted on Fridays and Wednesdays.
Yeah,
so I was like,
2 days.
I'm going to add Wednesday. So I added Wednesday. I started doing some research on this, and there's a guy named Nassim Taleb who, if you've listened to me for 5 minutes at any point, I've talked about Nassim Taleb. He's a hero of mine. He talks about the fact that they say the Mediterranean diet is so good for you. But he says, actually, the thing you don't account for in the Mediterranean diet is the people that live around the Mediterranean are either Orthodox Christians or Muslims. And they have like 100 fasting days in their calendar. So he says they eat 1/3 less food than us. And the number one longitudinal studies show the number one predictor of longevity in life is reduced caloric intake. Obviously not to the point of starvation. And I came to realize for me, a lot of the healing stuff that had happened for me was because I had been cutting back on the food, but I also had during that time, it's kind of, I don't hear as much quite from the Lord as I used to back then, right? But I got some real clear insight on some things I needed to do that literally set us up for success down the road. But it all came through the fasting. So it's one of those things, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and forget not all of his benefits. I think one of the benefits of we don't even realize the benefits that come with fasting, but you have to step into it. And for me, it took about 9 months of fasting. So what I did is I shifted. Well, I used to do the Friday to Wednesday. After about 9 months, I shifted to doing intermittent fasting. So now I only eat between noon and 6. Now
that's every day.
That's pure physical reasons. There's no spiritual reasons for that. When I do want to do like more spiritual reasons, I'll do a full day fast. But man, it was life changing for me. So I'm kind of like a vegan. If you hang out with me long enough, you'll find out I'm in. Vegans have to tell you they're vegan immediately. And I'm kind of like that with fasting now. I tell everybody I fast. Saw somebody the other day and they're like, hey man, how you staying so thin? I'm like, intermittent fasting, baby. So it was interesting because it started out as a spiritual thing for me, but now I've seen the physical benefits of it. And I really enjoy the physical benefits of it too.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are a lot of things that the Lord said in the Old Testament, a lot of those laws that later we found out, wow, there's great health benefit in that,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm convinced that the law of God was not it was given for two purposes. I mean, it was, first of all, to lead us to Christ, is what it tells the New Testament, to point out to us that we can't meet the law. But I think a lot of it was just given like, hey, it's going to go better for you if you do this.
Yeah.
Not a matter of thou shalt not.
Well, it's the eating a third less food calories.
Yeah.
Like that just makes a difference. A lot of our sicknesses are due to, we just have abundance. A lot of our sicknesses are abundance issues.
Yeah. Because most people, a king would be fat, and that was a sign of wealth, because so many people just had enough to get by for the day, in an agrarian society where if the crops fail, you're up a creek, you don't just run out to the grocery store. So we do have an abundance, and it's just interesting, though, you think about it, so what's the benefit of fasting? I mean, first of all, just the fact that Jesus did it, that'd be enough. But a lot of the things that I think God has told us to do are really for our benefit. He doesn't really say they're for our benefit, but your life's just going to go better if you don't steal from your neighbor. Your life's just going to go better if you don't commit adultery. Your relationships are going to be better if you're honest, if you're faithful. And so, many times we look at the law as this heavy-duty thing that, is just something grouchy old God came up with to keep us from having fun. But really, he's just saying, hey, your life's going to go better if you do this.
I was thinking about that. 1 John 5:2-4, it says, his commands are not burdensome, for everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. There's this element of realizing that if you want to win in life, which, I mean, that sounds so poppy and inspirational, but really, if you want to win in this life, you get in line with God's order.
Yeah.
And you're going to win. Like if you get in line with his principles and what he's set up, you can thrive in this life in spite of everything going on around you because you're in line with that. So his commands are not burdensome. They're actually setting you up to win in this life because you're getting in line with the order he's set up. And he knows how he made you. He knows our physical bodies.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like the gears of life are going to go this way, and you can either grind up against them or you can figure out how life works, and you can synchronize with God's principles in life, and life goes better for you.
So, first of all, I think we have to qualify this because we live in a litigious society. We are not doctors, but here's my pro tip on if you want to get started with fasting. First of all, do a ton of research. And I would also, if you have some diabetes or some sort of medical condition, the crazy thing is there's a lot of medical conditions that are actually being healed by fasting. Yeah. So I would encourage you, if you think you want to get into fasting and you do have some medical issues, check with your doctor, do the research. Don't just take our word for it. But for what worked for me is I started off doing a 1-day thing. I think sometimes we dive into things too much and we're like, I'm going to do a 40-day, fast. And just start with a small thing and then do it consistently. And that's what happened with me. I did the 1 day consistently, 1 day of fasting. And I think pretty much anybody, no matter your medical situation, can survive 1 day of fasting.
You can even do it where, so eat your dinner at 5 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah.
And then don't eat breakfast, don't eat lunch, and eat dinner. That's a 24-hour fast. And you're not even, that's kind of, it counts. What does it count?
I think the heart of it, God wants the heart more than anything. So and that's the other thing too, is like, say you have a medical condition that's diabetic. They say you can't not eat, right? It's the heart that matters behind it. So what can you, and I think that's been a traditional Christian thing for years, even during Lent, people fast something that actually costs them something to give up. It's not fun to give it up, but it's the heart behind it that matters.
Yeah, and Isaiah 58 is really kind of the quintessential biblical passage on fasting, where the people are saying, Lord, we fasted and you didn't hear us. What happened? And he goes on, and it really has nothing to do with not eating food. It has to do with your heart issue. And one final thing, let me just suggest a book. If you want to know more about fasting, there is a classic out there called God's Chosen Fast by Arthur Wallace. And it's a very balanced approach to fasting, and it'll give you a whole bunch it's very scripturally researched and medically researched, and God's Chosen Fast. Good book.